Just allow your experience to be as it is, without any attempt to change it in any way. Unless, of course, you are uncomfortable or in pain, in which case, of course, feel free to make yourself as comfortable as possible. And be sure to include the full spectrum of your experience. By experience, I mean anything with an objective quality or content to it, a thought, a feeling, a sensation, the sight of this room, a sound, taste, texture, smell, memory, image, etc. Allow the full spectrum of your experience to be as it is, without focusing on any particular element of it. Ask yourself the question, how is it that my experience is known? With what is my experience known? What is it that renders experience knowable? All our lives we give our attention to the objects of experience. Thoughts, images, feelings, sensations, perceptions, etc. Many people go through their entire lives without ever wondering or asking, how come experience is knowable? What is it that illuminates our experience? think of all the hours that between us all we spent studying at school and university. Did any of your teachers or professors once ask you the question, with what do you know your knowledge and experience? I've asked this question to thousands of people now. Nobody yet has answered yes. Whatever it is that knows or is aware of our experience is not itself an experience. A thought cannot experience something. A feeling or a sensation cannot perceive. A perception cannot be aware of anything. Whatever it is that knows our thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions is not itself a thought, feeling, sensation, or perception. What is that? What is it that notices the temperature of the air on your skin? What is it that is aware of your current thoughts and feelings? What is it that knows the sound of my voice or the sight of this room? When I use the word know or knowing in this context, I don't mean conceptual knowing. I mean, I use the word to know or knowing in the same way that When you tread on your cat's tail, it knows the experience of pain. It doesn't conceptualize it, but it knows it or is aware of it. So please understand that when I use the word to know or knowing in almost all contexts, I mean knowing as in experiencing or being aware of. I don't mean conceptual knowing. What is it that is knowing or aware of the sight of this room or the sound of crickets? See where you go to find the answer to this question. See what happens to your mind as it tries to find the answer to this question. What is it that is aware of my experience? The mind is asking itself that question. The common name for that which knows or is aware of our experience is I. I know my thoughts. I am aware of feelings and sensations. I see the world. As such, I is the knowing or the aware element in all experience. Our thoughts, images, feelings, sensations, perceptions are continuously appearing and disappearing. But this knowing I, this aware I, remains consistently present throughout all experience. Ask yourself the question, is there any element of experience that remains consistently present apart from myself? Have any of you ever had a thought, feeling, image, sensation, or perception that was continuous, that didn't at some point disappear? Even since we have been here at Titignano this afternoon, each of us has had numerous thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions which have appeared, existed briefly, and then disappeared. None of these remain. But you, I, that with which the objects of experience are known, remains consistently present throughout all changing experience. This knowing or aware I is not something extraordinary or exotic or mystical or spiritual. It's not something that some special people have more of than others. It's not something that some specially qualified people have more access to than others. In fact, the reason why most people overlook or ignore this knowing I is not because it is so strange and unfamiliar, unknown, exotic. On the contrary, it is precisely because it is so intimate, so familiar, so close, so ordinary. But most people overlook it. That is, overlook themselves, in favor of objective experience. That is, in favor of their thoughts, images, feelings, etc. The Shankaracharya used to tell a story about 10 men who swam across the Ganges, and when they got to the other side, they wanted to be sure that they were all there, so each man counted all the other men, and of course each man counted only 9 men. So thinking that one of them had drowned in the passage, they all started weeping. And as always seems to happen in these stories, an old man happened to be passing by, saw that they were all huddled together, miserable and weeping, and asked them what the trouble was, and they explained that one of their friends had been drowned while swimming across the river. So he looked at them all and he said, I'm going to tap each one of you on the head, and when I tap you on the head, you count. So he taps the first one on the head, 1. The second one, 2. The third one, 3, etc. And of course the last one, 10. And so they all looked around in amazement and realized that they had forgotten to count themselves. They had ignored themselves. They had overlooked themselves. And this the Shankaracharya used to use as a simple example of how we simply ignore or overlook the simple presence of ourself, our own being, that to which we refer when we say I, in favor of the content of our experience, that is, in favor of objective experience, thoughts, images, feelings, etc. Each man had overlooked himself simply because he was too close to himself to be able to be seen as a man. And it is for the same reason that almost all people overlook or ignore themselves, because our self is too close to itself to be known as an object of experience. In just the same way that the eyes, the E-Y-E, the eyes cannot see themselves because they are too close to themselves. So the I, the letter I, the self, our essential being, cannot know itself as an object of experience because it cannot stand back from itself. It cannot separate itself from itself and view itself as an object of experience. But that doesn't mean that we do not know ourselves. We know ourselves more intimately than we know any other thing. Only our knowledge of ourself doesn't take place in subject-object relationship. When we say, I know my thoughts, I am the subject, the knowing subject of my experience. My thoughts are the objects of my experience. I perceive the world. I am the subject of experience. The world is the object. I love you. I am the subject. You are the object. All knowledge and experience takes place, or I should say seems to take place, in subject-object relationship, apart from one unique knowledge. And that is the knowledge of ourself. When we say, I know myself, the I that knows and the self that is known are the same. In fact, our knowledge of ourself is the only knowledge there is that does not take place or does not seem to take place in subject-object relationship. It is a unique knowledge. It is the primary knowledge, the most fundamental knowledge there is, our self's knowledge of itself. Not some extraordinary, mystical, spiritual, enlightened knowledge, just the knowledge that each of us refers to when we say, I know that I am. Is there anyone here who, in this moment, cannot say from their own experience, simply, I know that I am? How extraordinary is the knowledge that I am? Is it not the most ordinary, the most obvious, the most intimate knowledge there is? When we say, I know that I am, the I that I am is the same I that knows that I am. So just as relatively speaking, the sun illuminates itself simply by being itself without having to shine its light on itself or direct its light towards itself. So our self, that to which we refer to when we say simply I, knows itself simply by being itself. It doesn't have to direct its attention in any particular direction. There is no distance from ourself to ourself. When I ask you, what is it that knows or is aware of my experience? Or rather, when your mind asks itself the question, what is it that knows or is aware of my experience? How far does your mind have to travel to find the answer? Does it have to go anywhere? So simply ask yourself the question, what is it that knows or is aware of my experience? And see what happens to your mind as it tries to find the answer. Whatever it is that knows or is aware of our experience is what we call I. So the question, what is it that knows or is aware of my experience, could be reformulated simply as the question, who or what am I? It's the same question. What do we mean when we say I? I is that element of my experience that always remains with me. I am present during the waking state. I am present during my dreams. I am present in deep sleep. It's why we say, I slept well last night. I was present in my experience yesterday, last year, 10 years ago, and when we were young children. So another way of formulating the same question would be to ask ourselves, what element of my experience is always with me? what can never be taken away from me. What element of my experience can never be lost? When everything that can be taken away from me is taken away from me, what remains of myself? What is my naked, irreducible self? Which is present prior to all experience, in the midst of all experience, and after the end of all experience. What is that? Many of you have heard of the Indian sage Ramana Maharshi, whose entire understanding was precipitated by this line of questioning we are going through this evening. What is it that knows or is aware of my experience? What is it that cannot be removed from me? What is the continuous element of my experience? What am I prior to all experience? He formulated the question simply by saying, who or what am I? And he came across this question presented it to him just spontaneously. As a 16-year-old child, he just one day became overcome with the fear of death. He thought he was dying. So he just lay down on the floor and said to himself, I'm dying. He felt he was dying. And he felt that in the death process, everything would be taken away from him. His parents, his friends, his country, his thoughts, his feelings, his sensations, his body. He spontaneously went through this process. Everything is being removed from me. And he simply asked himself, what will remain of myself? Will anything remain of myself when everything that can be removed from me is removed from me? And as a result of this question which presented itself to him spontaneously, he just traced his way back in his own experience to his essential, irreducible being. That element of his experience which shone as the knowledge I. This indestructible, unchangeable, undying, unborn, self-aware being. Just the essence of himself, the essence of each of us. Nothing extraordinary, nothing mystical, nothing spiritual. Just the essence of each of us as we are, whatever the condition of our minds and bodies, in this and in every moment. So having discovered the presence of I, this week we will explore its nature. And its relationship to all experience. And we will do this both philosophically and experientially. In my opinion, a spiritual practice or a model of reality must be able to stand the scrutiny of reason and also be verifiable in our direct experience. So we will explore both these aspects, philosophically and experientially. But there is also a third element, which, in my opinion, is an essential ingredient of any spiritual path or model of reality. And that is that happiness must be its consequence. So these are the three requirements, in my opinion, of a model, any model of reality or any spiritual path. It must stand the scrutiny of reason. It must be verifiable in our experience. And happiness must be its consequence. So we've all had a long day, so let's leave it there. Thank you.